how to transition from a permanent role to a contract role in the UK as a software developer. My name is Isaac, previous CTO of a funded startup, and I run the checkout team at Pretty Little Thing. Question has been raised by a couple people who are in a position at the moment and want to make a move to contracting. I've been contracting for about a little bit over a year now, and I've been in the industry for 5+ years. Previously made a video contrasting and comparing the differences between permanent and contract. If you are leaning toward the contract side, you've been in your role for a couple of years now, this video is for you. Okay, so to be very short, a lot of this is down to experience. I had a bit of an uphill battle at first when I first tried to get into contracting. I wouldn't really attempt this unless you are upper mid or senior, because I think below that it's just going to be really tricky. Generally, when people want a contractor, it's not to upskill them or scale them. It's because they've got a short amount of time, they need work done quickly, so they just try to get someone on board that's competent and knows what they're doing. Obviously, it's not an exact rule because you might have worked at a bigger company that gives you more prestige. People have done more with less, but that's just advice to start with, disclaimer. Okay, so additional things you will need to be aware of before even getting a contract job. IR35. If you are inside IR35, then there's no real changes, and I also think that I read the IR35 bill is actually going to get scrapped in the next year or so, so I actually won't matter for too long anyway. However, if you are outside of IR35, the way this essentially works is you are a business that another business is contracting for services, which means beforehand you will need your own company set up. In the UK, it's not terribly expensive. I think it could be like £20 to do. I used mycompanyformations.co.uk, I think. I'll put the link in the description, but I think that costs £80, but they did a lot of the work for me that I didn't really want to have to bother doing. The UK business code that I used was 62020, which is information technology consultancy activities. If you don't have an accountant, I would seriously consider it. You can use tools like Xero or other accountancy software, but if you think about it, you're actually going to be a business. So it's like, are you going to run payroll? Are you going to go around it a different way? Speak to an accountant to get the best value for your money, and also just to avoid any kind of risk. Me personally didn't want to risk it, so I just went straight to an accountant. So I can't talk too much on the software side of it because I've not done it myself. You will also probably need certain insurances as well, so like limited liability or an indemnity in case you damage their software or leak like customer information or something. These insurances, they'll tell you when you get the job, and I'd advise you wait until then because you can then get it for, let's say they're hiring you for 6 months, you can get a 6 months insurance clause. It will happen on the same day. It doesn't take very long to go through, so I'd advise waiting just before they tell you what you need and then buy that insurance. That aside, wherever you are at in your career, I would highly advise you lean on your strengths, because not having any contract experience does actually kind of work against you when someone's hiring a contractor. You really just have to get your foot in the door. Like, even if it's just for a 3-month job and you take less money doing it, just get it done, get a contract role, and after that, I promise you it will be easier to find contract roles. So now actually getting the contract role. There's only really 2 steps in getting this, which is get interviews, nail the interviews. And they are kind of numbers games. So the more interviews you get, the more chance you have to actually nail the interview, and the more interviews you have, the more chance you have to actually get the job. The more you do, the likelihood is the more you'll secure, and certainly the more you do, the better you'll get at the process. So I'd advise volume, which is one of the approaches I took personally. So how to get interviews? You gotta get your CV ready. CV, you'll figure out, you know what to do. Plenty of templates online for looking up CVs. If you're unsure, you want something specific, feel free to message me. I'll actually have a look and give you some advice. Work with recruiters to get interviews. I can't say this enough. They are very much incentivized to help you get placed into jobs because they get paid for doing it. The money that they get paid comes from the company side, so it means you front under the bill. So essentially they're getting paid to help you and you don't have to pay any of it. Very, very useful. They also give you really good advice on what type of jobs to go for and day rates to ask for, because fundamentally they'll be the ones pitching you to the companies. Especially when first starting, ask for advice on your CV. How can you update it to make it more likely that you'll be considered for a certain role? They will tell you, maybe it's like buzzwords, whatever it is. They are the direct point of contact with the companies that are hiring, which means they have a much deeper insight into how they put it across. And even if what you think a recruiter is telling you is maybe nonsense in terms of like, oh, but that's not the technology, they're the ones selling it. So the best thing you can do is equip them with what they think is the best to sell, even if it makes them more enthusiastic. Doesn't matter. Your only job with the recruiter is to get to the next stage, which is an interview. Ask what price that you should go for. Again, they've got better ideas on this. Previously, ignored someone advising me to go down lower, but it's because I already had interviews at the price that I'd set. So take that with a pinch of salt, but they will give you a good benchmark if you don't know what to do. Going lower, short term's not bad. Like I said, get your foot in the door. whatever. Ask them for interview advice as well. Normally they just give it anyway because they want you to get the job, but it can be very useful in terms of they'll have more information on the job, and by prepping for the interview beforehand, it can improve your chances of nailing the interview. The reason I say that is because you don't get a lot from job postings for contract jobs, which I'll get to in a second. To find these recruiters, the best thing you can actually do is just apply for jobs, and you do that by going on job boards. So in the UK, you literally just put like outside IR35 contract, and then you put whatever technology you use, or contract developer. For me, it would be like Node, TypeScript, maybe React, something like that. And jobs will come up. The jobs don't tell you very much about the role. The reason is because they are put up by recruitment agencies. They don't tell you who the company is or give away any information like that because they want you to go through them, and that's fine. They will just list the technologies and how much the day rate is. I'd advise applying for like $5 a day. Do that for 2 weeks. I promise you get a call. If you don't, start looking for lower day rates, but it's unlikely that you won't get any degree of call. Because the recruitment agency is essentially the ones that are using the job boards, it's not very often that you will be applying to a job directly, but this is actually better because you'll be applying to a recruitment agency and they'll put your details on record. Once your details are on record and they call you up to check how you're doing, the likelihood is they'll have a couple jobs they actually have in mind for you. So instead of getting the one job, they'll say, look, there's 3 roles that I think you're a fit for. What do you think? And just take all of them. And then the only other thing I can say is lean on experience, especially when you apply for jobs or when you speak to recruiters. So for me, previously in the past, I'd worked at Pretty Little Thing, and the startup that I worked on, which was immediately afterwards, was e-commerce based. Pitch that. So it's like, I have a background in blah, blah, blah. That makes it a lot easier for them to find roles for you and put you ahead. Even though you don't necessarily have the contract experience, if you've got relevant industry experience, it's an easier pitch for them. If you've got a great social media, lead with that. If you've ran a business in the past, lead with that. Just give the recruiters fuel. The only objective of this role is to make sure you're getting interviews, and that's completely dependent on how the recruiter puts you across and your CV. A little water break. And then there's the interview process. As I said, it is a numbers game. The more you do them, the better you will become at them. I'm applying. I actually try and get as many as I can, especially when I first started. That was one of my approaches. Recruiters aren't going to mind. They're actually going to back you up with this. So they might come to you with 3 jobs saying like, hey, these are the potentials. Take all of them. They're happy with that. If you get one that you're happy with and you tell them, cool, you'll also probably have multiple recruiters contacting you at the same time. They know that. That's just how the business goes. It's very fast paced. So do just take on as many as you can get because it increases your odds. If you get 3 interviews in a week and you get all of them, who cares? You've also become better at the interviewing process, which is going to help you later on. The reason I took this bulk force approach is the more interviews you do, the more you'll find repeat questions. So the reason someone would hire for Perm is normally a little bit more nuanced than why someone would hire for a contract role. Contract role, it's very generally, you're not going to hit the deadline and you need additional dev work. So normally all they're really checking for is a good degree of competency in communication. Your only real job from the interview is just to reassure them that you actually do know what you're doing and that you're easy enough to communicate with. That's the whole goal. Although you might not feel like you have the power in this situation, do remember these people are very much looking for the talent. They need it and they're willing to pay for it. Your job is to convince them it's not a waste of their money. Main questions that they're going to ask you, technical questions are a little bit more diverse and it kind of depends on the framework or whatever technology, but they also very specifically hire for a technology, not a generalist role. Generally, in all my contracting interviews, they always ask questions about, in a framework, how would you do this? What happens when this is compiled by the framework? I don't really want to get into that because this is more sort of about the soft side. For me, I actually just went to the interviews and like I said, there were questions that would be repeats. There are things that I don't even necessarily think made me better at my job. It was like, in this version of React, when did this get released? And it's kind of like a test. I don't even remember some of them because I didn't think they were applicable for the job necessarily. I just learned them so that I could regurgitate them and give them that reassurance that I can do my job. And every time I get a job, I've done more than fine. It's just the process. They're also probably going to ask you why you're going into contracting and not full-time. I don't necessarily know if it's the best answer, but the answer I always gave was I felt like I needed a new challenge. So with the full-time thing, it's nice and you get stable, you get involved with something, but the type of style I like doing, like I love working more gritty problems for like a year or so. Once it gets easy, I feel like I lose interest. Not necessarily the truth. At the time, the startup that I was working actually took a nosedive and I had zero monies in the bank and contracting was the best way to make money. But you have to spin it in a way that it sounds believable and makes sense for why you're making the transition. You don't want to lie, but something that a better way of framing your instincts that makes you more appropriate for a contract role. Enthusiasm is also a good one. You want to make sure that you are aware that what you're about to do is challenging and you're up for challenge. Because like I said, contractors are brought in to do challenging things. It's also pretty good if you ask in-depth questions about the architecture. Again, like I said, it's specific to the role or framework, but you can show them your competence by asking like, oh, have you done this? And if they have a certain approach, ask them why they did that instead of something else. That's a little bit tricky to teach for because it kind of is to do with your expertise on the area. But I think if you don't have expertise in the area, you're going to struggle a little bit in the job anyway. So you do want to make sure that you're bringing it to the forefront and actually showing it to them. Make sure for every question you either ask them or they ask you, try your hardest to draw an experience, because you're trying to convince them why they should hire you over someone that's been contracting 5+ years. And there are very valid reasons. One of the valid reasons could be you've worked in this industry for the exact same amount of time, and the only difference is that you're contracting and you're just as good at the job. So make sure for every question they ask, and even for every question you ask them in terms of why they're taking a certain approach, try your hardest to relate to previous experience you've had. If they're using an approach with like deployment that you think is a bit not even interesting, but there's multiple ways to do it, so you go, oh, okay, that's interesting. At my old place we did this, or 2 companies ago they had a pipeline that did this. Like, is there a reason you've picked what you're doing over this? Because this seems more efficient. Every time you can relate to something, it shows them competence in the field. That being said, it kind of is a trial and error thing. I think more advice on that is not going to be useful unless I drill down more specific on the technology. Even then, I can only do it for the ones that I've interviewed for and got the jobs for. The great thing about contracting though is it moves very quick. So you normally hear back within a week. The recruiter will get back to you, give you some feedback. Always ask for feedback, because sometimes they will tell you. Occasionally you won't get the job just because someone else is more experienced, and that's actually fine. There's nothing you can do in that situation, but again, if they don't give bad feedback, that's actually good feedback. So cool, try that approach somewhere else. And it is a numbers game. When I was first looking, I do think it took me like 3 months. I must have gone through like 7-8 different interviews. But then once you get it, it gets so much easier. The last contract that I did, I think I found it in 2 weeks. So the more experience you have, it's so much easier. If you have to lower your day rate and do a small, like even like a 3-month contract, perfectly fine, just get it done. Because even lowering a day rate is probably around what you're getting full time anyway. So this is just my experience, but I do hope it was useful. If you know someone that's trying to make the transition from perm to contract, send them this video so they have a better idea how to navigate. Thank you for your time.